and welcome back to Meet the Authors. Our guest for this segment is Mary Abraham. Hello, Mary. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Mary is here with her first book of her career, something she says she always wanted to write a book, and she got the idea from a friend. So I'm going to have her tell us all about it. But first, Mary, pick up your book, show it to the audience. Let's see what you have here.
The title of the book is Where the Creek Runs. It is set in South Mississippi, largely in Greene County. I grew up in Leakesville, so one of the towns in the book, although it's called Levin, is based largely on Leakesville. It is about a family with a very domineering father. He has great political ambitions, power, desires prestige in his community, and he carries over to the way he treats his family. He wants their appearances to satisfy the look he thinks they should have for his political gains.
Yeah, I love this. I've read this book, and I just want to say that I think it's really remarkable the way that you make these characters come alive. You know, it's almost a literary book, because there's so much description of what Mississippi, what country is like in those days. Reader can really get pulled into it so easily. And the father, is so strong, so strong-willed.
He is strong, and the daughters, particularly, there are two daughters and one son. The two daughters make decisions, particularly one of them, that goes contrary to what he would dictate that they do, and it has consequences. Consequences not only for her, but that affect the entire family for the rest of their lives, really.
That's true of all families. I mean, we have to live our own lives, and parents may want to direct how it's done, but I'll tell you, that Hannah, that middle girl, she had a mind of her own, and ended up really having to change her life. And in those days, of course, single motherhood was a whole different issue than it is today.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The response in the community, the response by the family.
Who are these characters based on? The father, is that based on your father?
No.
No.
In fact, that would just, I had never even thought about that until after I had published the book. A friend caught me one day, and a mutual friend in Texas had called her and said, did Mary wait until after her mother died to write this book because it's based on her family? And I really was stricken, because my father was one of those gentle giants, a kind, dear man. I did know people like this. I had friends. The story is loosely based on fact. It is a story that a friend of mine in Hattiesburg, actually, but had roots in Greene County, told me one day and made a connection with his family with a family that lived in Hattiesburg. It's something I had never heard before, but that's what prompted me to, I just kind of kept mulling that over, and I thought maybe now's the time. I've always wanted to write a story. I will take what he has said and use that as a seed to work toward. And that's what I did. One day, without preparation, without knowledge, I don't recommend it. There are so many helps for writers that people need to do, and I'm afraid I didn't do any of them, not because I didn't think I needed it, I just didn't think about it.
Well, I think that you did the right thing. I tell people this all the time. If you want to be a writer, you got to write. And you get your first draft out, and yes, of course, then you go back and you rewrite and you learn new techniques. My first book I wrote without any experience, and it took me all these years to write it. And then I gave it to some people and said, this is awful. And it was. And the point was that you learn from doing it. If you wait until you know everything, you'll never get anything done. So you have this book in your heart, like Mary did, and you put it out. And it's such a joy to have your own book out. Tell us about the process of getting it published.
Well, I did try the usual routes, because that was what I thought I was supposed to do. I did send queries once I thought it was ready and had been edited, and it was time for that.
Did you get it professionally edited?
I did. Joe Lee, who is a writer in Mississippi from Brandon, and has Dogwood Press Publishing as well. Although the first time I met Joe, he said, I will help you. This is my fee. We will work together if you want me to, but I won't publish it. At the time, I was disappointed, but it was a gift to me for us to start on that
Yeah.
path. So he, yes, helped me publish it. All the queries I sent when we were ready, the rejections came almost more quickly than I could push the send button. I had rejections.
That's so common.
I did that 35 or 40 times, I guess, and I thought, but they came back so quickly that I really thought, it's not my writing they're rejecting.
It's just the concept. It's not.
They're
that's
just
the way
rejecting.
They want to make people who are well known publish. So, but this
Right.
is not self-published. You have a professional.
It is self-published.
It is self-published now.
My husband, who was very kind, I think all the rejections were coming back. He hated it for me as badly as I, well, I didn't. It almost was like I wasn't expecting anything else, because I had read articles that people didn't hear from publishers anyway, especially someone with no writing credentials and no name recognition, and that's plus, and I was 70 years old.
Yeah.
So there was a lot that publishers had to think about. And so he said, what else would you like to do? And I said, well, there's self-publishing out there, and that's what I did.
And I think it's a wonderful way to go. I have 25 books now, and all but one is self-published, and I'm very proud of them. I don't think there's anything wrong with self-publishing. It's so much easier. I mean, we're not talking about the 1960s or 70s where you could only go professional publishing. The options are really nice, and as you can see, it's a beautiful book, very well constructed, very well written, and anybody gets this. Show us where you can get the book.
Well, here on the coast, Southern Bound.
Southern Bound Books is a lovely bookstore on Howard Street in Biloxi.
There were some copies. I don't know if there's still any there. I'm happy to take them some more at Bay Books in
Bay St. Louis.
Bay St. Louis. Main Street Books in Hattiesburg, Amazon.
Yeah.
Are
and on my website, just pull that out. I will have a link to it on Amazon for
Thank
for
you.
authors, you bet.
Thank you.
And so what are you going to do next? You said you really aren't sure you're going to do another book.
I don't know. I've written a little bit. People have sent me notes since this was published, and they've asked me things like they'd like to know what happens to the children.
Yeah.
Would I write more about
sequel?
Right. Or other characters in the book. They want
That's
to know
the
what's
sign
happened.
of a good book. People get so involved with the characters, say, what happens next?
And I did try that a little bit. I've written a little bit and tried to plug them in, and somehow it just wasn't working really.
Yeah.
So I've written some, but in another path altogether.
You have to follow your heart. You have to
We'll
follow where your writing
see.
goes. Absolutely.
We'll see.
And what else are you doing? You see, you lived in Hattiesburg. Your husband was a thoracic surgeon. Is that right?
He is, and now he is retired, semi-retired. He works almost every day, but the hours are certainly different because he can come home when he wants to. He first assists in the operating room now.
Up in Forest General.
At Forest General.
Yeah.
And so
I was telling Mary earlier, I worked for a little while at Wesley as an ER doctor, but never have worked at Forest General.
Well, I'm sorry. Come back and
I'm semi-retired
we'll
myself
welcome
now. I don't need to go back to work, thanks.
we have a lot of emergency room physicians, and I'm sure they would welcome you.
That's sweet of you to say. So your book is a beautiful little book, and it's set in the 20th century, called Where the Creek Runs, and talks about a family starting really from babyhood on Hannah all the way up through her children's development as well. It's a lovely book. Thank you for coming on our show.
Thank
Mary.
you.
So glad
Thank
come
you.
join us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So thank you all for coming and joining and welcoming us into your home for this episode of Meet the Authors. You can get my books, get our authors' books, and support the local authors.